So I'll give you a whole third dimension on living technology. And my job today is really to tell you about robot technology, where we came from, where we are today, and maybe where it will go in the future. So if you think about robot technology, it really came out of the Industrial Revolution. So basically, some of the first things that enabled the Industrial Revolutions were great inventions like this, like the spinning frame that made it possible to make much stronger threads in 1733. There was something like the steam engine in 1760, which replaced water as power. So before this time, you basically always had to put your factory right next to a river, because otherwise you couldn't power your factory. But the invention of the steam engine meant you could make factories anywhere. So a huge breakthrough that we don't think about today. There's something like the worm gear, a mechanical piece that increased the precision of the machines they could build back then dramatically. So there's sort of some very early things that made the Industrial Revolution possible. And the robots came already in '61, and it came in Henry Ford's car factory in 1908. And what he did there was that he split manufacturing of a car, in this case, into many simple pieces. So you could basically have something that put on the windshield, somebody who put in the light, somebody who put on the tire, and so on. And the task was so simple that they could even be done by a stupid robot. And that was actually how the robots came in, that the task had been simplified to a degree that even machines could do them. So it was not maybe so much the robot technology that was the invention at the time, it was actually creating an environment in which the robots could function. So it's sort of the other way around. So if we move forward to today, then if we look at factory automation, I believe we are reaching the end of automation. We have pretty much worked on this thing for 200 years, and we're getting very good at automizing our production. One way of looking at this is using Danish kroner here. So today, a robot typically costs around 300,000 Danish kroner, and the cost to pay the people to actually implement this robot in your production is about 1 million kroner. So I think that's an indication of how complicated it really is. I mean, if it was cheap to put a robot out there, then it would cost 30,000 kroner. But it's actually so complicated that it requires a whole team of engineers. So I think that's an indication we're kind of reaching this end of what is possible to automate. Of course, there's still more, but it's sort of slowing down a little bit. So this is where robots came from. But now we are seeing sort of a whole new set of robots. And they have just appeared within the last 10 years or so. Here is Sony's Curie robot, an example of a humanoid robot. And it's completely changing. It's not a stupid machine standing in a factory isolated from the world. It's starting to become something that we can engage with. However, they're still machines, so remember they are still related to the industrial machines, so it's not like this guy will run around and take over the world. They can still only do the very simple tasks that we have programmed it to do. Even though it's a mechanical masterpiece, you know, the brain is in many ways empty. If we move on, robotics is also changing in a not so encouraging way. Here we have military applications. So again, moving out of the factory, they look like impressive machines, but again, the inside is relatively empty. So for instance, our drones up there, they can fly around autonomously and do surveillance, but they don't think by themselves. There's a human operator at the other end pressing the button if you need to fire a missile or take a picture or something like this. The same goes with the robots at the bottom. They're more nice in the sense that they're used for minesweeping. But still in this case, there's a human operator remote controlling these robots. But still they're moving out of the factory, but sort of maintaining the stupidity of the factory robots in many ways. I think now we start to move into something that is slightly different. So we're starting to have a new kind of robots here, and a very good example of this is the Roomba robotic vacuum cleaner that I've shown here. It's different because it can live its own life. It's a very, very, very simple life. But what is possible for this one is that it has a recharging station, so it can start from the recharging station, run around, vacuum clean a room, and once it runs out of battery, or just before it runs out of battery, or when it's done with the job, it can basically go back to the recharging station and be ready for the next day. So basically this is sort of a robot that has its own life and is able to do something sort of insect intelligent-like in your house, and maybe you don't have to worry so much about cleaning. So this is a whole new dimension for robots, that they can do stuff by themselves on their own initiative. So we already have these, and you have also something like Paro we saw before, and there's also lawnmowers and this kind of technology. If we take that one step further, then there are some of my colleagues from University of West of England. They have made this very nice robot, and also this one below. And what is interesting about this is that it doesn't depend on the power from the power plugs. In fact, the first one can catch slugs, dræbersnegle, and put them into a microbial soup on the back that can convert the slug into power that enables the robot to run around and catch more slugs. So basically it's even more alive than the vacuum cleaner you saw before. One thing that's important to say here is that a slug actually doesn't generate, or we are not able to get enough energy out of the slug to actually have the robot have enough power to catch another slug. So the energy balance doesn't really work out in this case, but the development is going in this direction. And also the robot at the bottom was it ran for about 7 hours on 7 flies, but it didn't go very far. But still this technology is being developed as we speak. So robots today, I've already told you, is kind of it's sort of limited self-sustainability, so we can recharge, and maybe in the future it can eat from our lawns while it's doing the lawn mowing, so we don't have to give it power. And they have this limited sense of autonomy. They can do some things on their own, but vacuum cleaners tend to get stuck on dirty socks and wires, so there's still some limited autonomy in these systems. So robots in the future, I think, will develop, and we'll see increased sustainability, self-sustainability, and autonomy. But we will see some of the other the other characteristics of living systems, like self-reproduction and the ability to evolve. Maybe. So we can of course not make robots directly from the environment. Robots are typically today made from metals and computer chips and so on. But we can imagine a situation where we have robotic cells. And we have these robotic cells lying around in the environment, maybe in a special cupboard in your house. And then once you want to construct a robot, you take these cells out and they form the robot you need right now. So let me just show you this video here. So what I have here is it didn't really work. I guess you can see it. Maybe what you can see here in the middle is one robot, and we imagine this robot was happy with the job it was doing, so it basically decides to replicate. So it divides up into 2 parts that then goes around the environment to try to find more modules that it can recruit to basically make a copy of itself. And then notice here, there's comes something interesting here in a moment. So of course they sense each other, so they have to move around a little bit to actually align and make the connection perfect. And here was the hand of God that came in to sort of help the process along. You can see in the meantime, this guy has made a copy of the original structure, and the program or the information from the first structure has been transferred to the second one, and they're now split again and would potentially drive out and find more modules to recruit, and you can imagine this process going on. Of course, now we have run out of modules in the environment, so we are done. But potentially, if there was more modules, this process could run on forever, except there was this little embarrassing hand here up, so it wouldn't run forever because it's not quite working, but we can push it, and with a little more work, it could be made more robust. So let me just go on with this. And actually, right now, we had a keynote at the conference running last week, talking about the Symbiom EU project. And here they're talking about this system, so every time the robots reproduce, that recruits modules in the environment, they basically introduce a small error. So basically, it tries to put a module where there was no module in the original robot, and through this process, they can slowly start to evolve. They're not doing anything but evolving at the moment, so they're not doing anything useful. They're simply just investigating whether they can achieve this capability. Then this is kind of where robotics is today, but then I think when you look ahead and you combine it with the other technologies we have in living technology, then maybe we start to get something like this. This is actually from about this week. Some Japanese researchers, they took a frog egg, and through some gene manipulation, they could make it sensible to different chemicals. So basically, if it was exposed to certain chemicals, it would create an electric energy that you could capture with your robot. So basically, this frog egg could go into the nose of a robot, and if you showed the robot fresh food, it would not, and if you showed it spoiled food, it would shake its head. So it could basically recognize the smells associated with these two things. And see, here is a sort of an interesting where some of the other living technology sort of blend with robot technology to potentially make something that is tremendously more powerful. Over here on the left, this is actually 2 years ago, so this is something we have today, is the brain gate, so basically a chip that you can get implanted in your brain, which allows you to control a robot arm. So you probably don't want a chip in your brain, but this guy in the picture has been paralyzed since he was 2 years old, and he participated in this experiment, and actually as part of this research he was able to feed himself for the first time in his life using this chip control of a robot arm. So in this case it helped this guy quite a lot. And this is not future. This product is going through clinical trial as we speak and will be available, of course, for patients who need it and can afford it probably. So this is another exciting future. And then there's something maybe we're interested at here at University of Southern Denmark. Maybe if Martin Hansek gets his little oil drops to do a little more, maybe I can apply all my robot technology and suddenly we get something much more fascinating and powerful, and then maybe this idea of robots in the blood is not so far away anyway. But of course it is science fiction, but the pieces are emerging. So this is the conclusion. So I would like to say we are on the edge of realizing these living robots. They're coming in various forms, all still limited in terms of self-sustainability, limited in terms of autonomy, limited ability to self-reproduce, limited risk together with usefulness. So they are not all very useful, but this also means they're not very dangerous. But as we move forward, of course, these two goes hand in hand. So as they become more useful, they will also be more dangerous. So it's something we need to think about. The last slide I have here is really to say that you know, this is not a scary thing that's happening in a dark lab somewhere on the South Pole. This is actually me doing it, and my colleagues in this room. We have some of the leading researchers work on these things sitting in the room today. So we are not strange people. You can actually come and talk to us and tell us, you know, I think this is a bad idea, I think this is a good idea, or something like this. So you're very welcome to come and visit our lab and see what we're actually doing in more detail and have your own take on it. Vi snakker også dansk. Yep, thank you. That was all.